To Springfield City Club. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Just a reminder, always feel free to invite people that haven't been to City Club. We're always looking for new members and get exposure to what we're doing here each week. This week it's exciting. For the first time ever, we have Tribal One coming to speak to us with Judy Farm and David Hill. Judy Farm is the CEO of Tribal One since 2014, directing work of the business economic development team for the Coquille Indian Tribe. In 2014 through 2019, served as the CEO of the Coquille Economic Development Corporation, overseeing the core gaming and hospitality business. She serves on boards of the Kids Unlimited Academy, the Southern Oregon Regional Health Group, and the Coquille, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay. Tribal Federation Corporation. David Hill is a local resident, lives in Springfield, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the Director of Economic Development for Tribal One's Lane County operation. Native Oregonian, enrolled as a member of the Coquille Indian Tribe, graduate of the University of Oregon, serves on the steering committee for Springfield Leadership, Eugene Springfield, and also a member of the Springfield Chamber of Commerce Board. City Club is excited to hear about Tribal One, the impact on the Coquille Indian Tribe through its work in construction, economic development, community technology, or communication technology, and professional services. So I'll hand it off. Once you're done with your presentation, we'll do a little Q&A and then wrap it up.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you, Nick.
Take it away.
Hello, everyone. David Hill, as Nick just mentioned, great introduction. Tribal One in all the companies is a mouthful. So we're going to hopefully break it down for everybody today that's here and online. We're going to first start with an introduction of who is the Coquille tribe. And we'll talk a little bit about the tribe and the history of the tribe. I am a Coquille tribal member. So I was born and raised Coquille tribal member. I was 3 years old when the tribe was federally restored. And you could do the math there, probably. But without further ado, Paige is here. And we're going to take us to the next slide. We want to start with a video that just does a really nice job of explaining who is the tribe and how do they show up in the community. So the next slide will take us into that.
And thank you, Paige, for interacting with all of our.
Make sure we're sharing.
Not easy to do.
Okay.
The Coquille people have lived in what is now called Southwest Oregon since time began. We are the original stewards of our homelands, blessed by our abundant fish, wildlife, forests, and waterways. All of this was taken from us. The 19th century began an onslaught of disease, displacement, and dispossession, annihilation, poverty, and assimilation. We nearly disappeared. And not so long ago, in 1954, the Western Oregon Termination Act declared us extinct. But we were not extinct. We survived. We persevered. We continued to gather as Coquille people, and we fought. Until finally, in 1989, the U.S. Congress once again recognized our sovereignty as the first people of this land. We were the last Oregon tribe to be restored. Though our heritage is ancient, our institutions are young. Our vision is vigorous. Today, we are nation builders. We strengthen our tribal sovereignty with landmark accomplishments in self-determination. Our Indian Trust Asset Management Plan, the first in the United States, that gives us unprecedented autonomy in forest management. Our cooperative management agreement with the state of Oregon gives us an equal voice on fish and wildlife in our 5-county service area. We strengthen our economic sovereignty by promoting self-sufficiency. Our economic development activities create employment and support needed services for our tribal families. We strengthen our personal sovereignty by investing in the wellness of tribal families, because self-reliance depends on healthy bodies and minds. We strengthen our future by caring for all things: our people, our lands, our waters, and our fish and animal cousins. We follow our traditional teachings to take only what we need and leave some for the others. We practice our traditions of potlatch to be generous and to ensure prosperity and goodwill in the communities where we live and work. As opportunities present themselves, we regain land ownership in our ancient homelands. Only through cooperation can we protect ourselves from losing all that we have fought to regain. Only through unity can we ensure that our identity as Indian people, our sacred culture, that our sovereign nations will always be present on the land of our ancestors. Despite the pain and struggles of the past, we are still here. Let us thrive together for generations to come, forever.
So it means a lot. Being a Coquille tribal member means a lot to be able to share this here in this space today with all of you. My grandfather was one of the elders who testified back in DC in the 80s to share his experience as a child, a Native child growing up, and what it was like to be, stripped of that heritage. But wanted to point out, because Tribal One is the business arm of the Coquille Indian Tribe, a lot of the principles and core values of what the tribe stands for and how we show up in community, and that crosses over into the work that we get to do at Tribal One. So it was mentioned it was mentioned in the video, but really the health and well-being of our tribal members, elder care, education, housing, that tradition of potlatch, which potlatch in our tribe there's three principal components of potlatch. Is everybody gets greeted. So if we have an event, everybody is greeted and welcomed. Everybody is fed. So you leave and you have a full belly, and then everybody is gifted with some sort of a memorabilia or some sort of a gift from the tribe. So that is potlatch. And then just being responsible stewards of the lands in our forests, and that's really the 7 core principles of the tribe, but it really gets to reflect and carry over into the work that we get to do at Tribal One. So next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the tribe and some of the areas that the tribe's core areas of expertise and focus, and that is the way that they show up as a community partner. And our Coquille tribe is, in our constitution, there's a 5-county service coverage area. And so those counties are Coos, Douglas, Curry, Jackson, and Lane County. So those 5 counties are designated by Congress and the tribe as the tribe's service coverage area. And so when the tribe is a community partner, that area is where we show up and can extend services to tribal members, but also the larger community. Things like public safety, where we've supported grants and dollars to our own tribal police, but also public law enforcement entities, supporting a narcotics team member and a canine dog in Coos County. And then environmental, arts, culture, community investment, that's really things like education, food, family services, housing, and then healthcare. We have a clinic here in River Road, which we'll talk about in a bit, but really a holistic approach to healthcare for mind, body, spirit, and community. So next slide. One of the great functions of the tribe is the Coquille Tribal Community Fund. And so this is an annual fund that's distributing funds across that service coverage area. So those 5 counties I mentioned. This year, we were able to give over $500,000 to organizations and nonprofits in those communities. And this is just a few. There was over, I want to say 77 different grants between the 5 counties with various dollars amounts, but 70,000 of which was distributed here to just a few, again, organizations that are doing an amazing work here in Lane County. Kids First, I know we've got some folks here that are affiliated, Family for Every Child, Springfield Young Breeders, Lane County Diaper Bank, Boys and Girls Club of Western Lane County, the Pearl Buck Center, Ophelia's Place, I forgot one at the top, and community supported shelters, just for naming a few. So, as I mentioned, Tribal One, the work we do carries over those principles in the way that we show up in communities. And so we're gonna now kind of talk about how Tribal One affords the tribe some of the opportunity to be able to give back to the community. So we've got a list, all of our different companies here, which include Tribal One Construction, Technology, Tribal One Broadband, Tribal One Architecture and Engineering, Tribal One Professional Services, Economic Development, our Coquille Wharf, and soon Tribal One Energy. But I'm going to turn it over to Judy to talk a little bit more about the history and some of the exciting projects that we've gotten to be a part of.
Well, thank you, David, and great job kind of introing the work that we do. The heart of Tribal One really is economic development. That's where we start with everything. So out of economic development, we've seen a lot of companies that do a lot of different things. Next slide. So kind of, the analogy in economic development is always planting seeds, right, that we foster, grow in terms of business development and growth. So this is kind of a fun slide. David thinks it looks like a carrot, which maybe it does. Right, cross-section of a carrot. This was what we looked like in about pre-2019-20. We were a lot of things that we were doing. So the SEDCO entity, which really encompasses the gaming component of economic development, and then lots of other things unrelated to that, which we'll talk about in detail. But we have access to a 50-acre parcel that is a terminal, a dock in Southern Oregon, and we call that the Coquille Wharf properties. And then accessing the small business associations, what they call it the 8A program, we were able to look internally to create some companies to leverage that opportunity. And then we put together an assemblage down in Medford, and we'll talk more about that as well. So we want to be clear when we talk about economic development, David and I, we are not talking about anything gaming related. That was cut off. So SEDCO and the mill properties, you've probably heard of the mill, that is not under our purview. That's not what we do. We do everything outside of that. People tease us internally in the tribe and say we do the hard stuff, which is kind of so, we just want to clarify that, make sure that we're not blending those lines. So this is what we look like today. Like I said, it goes off on the side, and we really are focusing on these verticals and divisions. I like to call them divisions, but really starting with nothing and bootstrapping a lot of this development and just having a lot of support from our tribal council and the work that we're doing. Another, I think, item that's notable is that the profits from the businesses, not only do we support jobs in our communities, jobs for our tribal members, but in our constitution for the tribe, our founding forefathers and mothers, there was mothers there too, they did not want us to have per capita as a tribe. And per capita is like some tribes, and a lot of tribes have the ability to cut checks to their membership out of profits of the business. We do not do that. Those support the profits, the revenues from our business that go back to the tribe support education, care of our elders, and health care for not only our tribal members, but our families that work for us, spouses and families of tribal members. So that's our mission, and that's where those dollars go. And I think, to me, I'm not a tribal member, that resonates with me a lot, because we believe in self-sufficiency, not just talking it, but through the business divisions, we can support self-sufficiency in people and learning how to work, being job ready, giving them opportunities to work. So if something happened and the tribe disappeared tomorrow, our tribal membership knows how to take care of themselves. And when I first started working for the tribe, because of termination and assimilation, there was a lot of tribal families in a lot of need. And it's really great. This June is going to be 35 years since termination and restoration. So it's really exciting to see what we've been able to do in 35 years. Pretty incredible. So this is our latest development that we just completed last summer. It has been fun. One of the things that we take pride in and what we do is we like bringing to the communities in which we do business fun and innovative, exciting complements to our communities. So we took a very aged 9-hole golf course, executive golf course. It's called Bear Creek Golf Course, and prior to us doing this remodel, everyone would come in and say, oh, I learned how to golf here, and it looks exactly the same as the 60s and 70s. But we did a complete remodel refresh, and we added Top Tracer technology, which is Top Golf's technology that they use. I would have loved to do a Top Tracer or a Top Golf site, but they do have demographic requirements that we can't meet in Jackson County. So we did a right-sized development there at the driving range. It's been a huge hit. We developed the outside patio areas, added a putting course, really transformed this amenity to the community into something that they're really proud of, the community itself and the tribe. So that development we just finished last summer. And then complementing that was some underutilized property that we took and brought Margaritaville to the valley. So we did a Compass by Margaritaville Hotel. It is the first Margaritaville development in Oregon and the second on the West Coast. So we were excited about that. And again, it's bringing something new and different to our communities. And we knew we wanted to bring a boutique development there, and it certainly is. I encourage you, if you're ever in Medford, go to 5 o'clock somewhere, bar and restaurant, have some lunch or dinner. You'll feel like you're in the Bahamas, not Medford, Oregon. So anyway, that was our latest development that we completed there. We do have a few parcels of undeveloped land there still that we have plans for, but that's for the future. And talking a little bit about our other verticals, we started with a company called Tribal One Broadband in the 90s, and the genesis of that was a need in the community to bring fiber to rural Oregon. There was not connectivity back then. So we took the lead as part of a group. We were on a board called NOAA back in the day, and we worked to bring fiber to the coast and support our local college there and some other bigger customers, and had a fiber ring that we were utilizing and growing that business until we had competitors like Charter, Communications, Frontier, and margins in broadband got really tight and difficult to compete in. So we made a decision to pivot and use that business and sell those assets and turn to the SBA's 8A program. So broadband brought us into it. We got partnered with a construction company. So out of broadband, we grew into a construction company. We are mostly a horizontal construction company working in paving, and that's where our focus and capabilities are, but we are expanding into some other fun projects that I'll talk about a little bit later. I don't know if that's our next slide, but go ahead, let's find out. Yeah, so we have a few mission critical projects that are fun to talk about. The first one is we've been doing work in Cheyenne Mountain, which if you're not familiar with that, apparently there's a movie about Cheyenne Mountain somewhere that people tell me about. I haven't watched it, but Cheyenne Mountain is where they track Santa. That's where NORAD is located. But it's a city within a mountain, and it's pretty incredible to go inside of it. It's high security, but we have put miles of conduit and fiber in the mountain as part of the Department of Defense, their strategy in upgrading their infrastructure. So that is Cheyenne Mountain. And then another one most recently that we've been doing is for Schriever Space Force. So I was telling David that is a new military branch, and what they do is really protecting the nation's assets that are in the sky. So one of our latest projects that we just completed was replacing 6 mission critical generators for that facility, so that if they were to lose power, we are providing that backup power through the generators that we procured there. And we did get delayed because of world events when Ukraine war started and some other things. To test those generators, we got to shut everything down. So the government did put a pause on that at certain times, so that's delayed us, but we just finished putting the last generator. That's that.
Where are those located?
In
Colorado?
Yes, I'm sorry, Colorado, yes. So most of this work, yeah, so I should say when we pivoted and sold the asset, the fiber ring, we went to Colorado, because that's where the majority of the Western Division federal work is. And since we are competing in that government contracting space, we went to where the work was. I like to say this business model allowed the tribe, we're in a rural market, right? It's really difficult to find opportunity. So we went to where opportunity is, and we're bringing dollars back to our community. This is just another, like I said, we're horizontal, specific in construction. So this was Alpha Ramp paving project that we completed on time, under budget. Our customer was Army Corps of Engineers. They were very pleased with this. I was telling David, you'd think cement is not a big deal. Turns out it's a really big deal. It has a very specific recipe. So if you make a mistake on this and you don't get it right as a contractor, you eat that cost. So this was a super high visibility project for us as well. But we're lucky in that the people that work for us are very talented. And the gentleman that runs our government contracting division, he is a retired Air Force colonel and had a whole background in doing paving and runways in the airport. So another vertical that we started looking internally at our core competence set is professional services. So that's finance, IT, HR. And we offered this service to our local businesses, local customers that wanted to focus on why they went into business in the first place, which usually is not doing the books and dealing with IT problems. So we started by just finding local customers that needed support and doing a great job with them. And then we have now launched into the government market. So instead of small businesses in our communities, which we still have as customers, we also have federal customers like USDA and HUD are two that we currently have. And so those are kind of our government contracting division verticals. And then we have this big wharf in North Bend. So this is an old warehouser asset that we purchased, ironically, just to get a parking lot, and it came with 50 extra acres. So, it's been a lot of cleanup work. I will say probably a decade of brownfield work and cleanup work after Weyerhaeuser left, and we are getting to the end of that. But at the same time, this is very finite and has an important purpose in terms of moving commodities in our area. So having the terminal, we are able to host foreign flag vessels, so we're a foreign enterprise zone. It has unique attributes that kind of leverage where we are at in Coos County. So we were partners for a very short time with the export business. We exited pretty quickly from that one. I took the job because I'm like, we don't know anything about this market, and I think it's better that we're a tenant landlord, or So we then just leased the wharf with that particular tenant. We now have another opportunity in which we have a tenant called Oregon Pellet Mills, OPM, I'm getting my acronyms. So that's with Seneca and Southport and Ocean Terminals. The principals from those companies came together to find a way to use biomass and converting them to pellets and then exporting. So they're our current tenant. They're gonna be putting a big ugly building out on that wharf. That's gonna fill up vessels like that, except instead of logs, they will be sending Europe for additional cleaner fuel pellets. So we also want to do some commercial, I should say. We're also, that industrial use and that reoccurring revenue is assisting us in doing the work of master planning for commercial and maybe other things on the wharf, because it is a big property. So there is a section that we think highest and best use is industrial, but we're also investigating and evaluating commercial retail use. And this one just kind of came around. This is the one I talked about. This is our local Eugene company. We are currently doing projects in Lane County at John Service Campus and Lane County Adult Corrections. They're a broadband company. They have an office here in Eugene. And they've done fun projects too up in Alaska, and this is one that we completed at Crater Lake. I'm gonna turn it back over to Dave.
Okay. We talk about healthcare. The tribe in 2021 purchased a healthcare clinic over off of River Road in the Santa Clara station. So it is a clinic that currently offers primary care, behavioral health, mental health, nutrition, laboratory services. If you go to the next slide, I think it lists all of those. This is what it looks like from the outside. We are currently doing a remodel. There's a basement in the building. And so we are remodeling that basement area for expanding on group therapy, group behavioral health, a space down there. So currently a lot of construction. We do have a tenant upstairs that offers dental, but ideally we would love to be able to bring everything all under one roof. So if you needed to get a prescription, or you needed to get your teeth worked on, or you needed to go get some lab work done, that it's all in one, it's all housed under one roof. So it is a satellite clinic. We do have a Coos Bay Coquille Wellness Center in Coos Bay on the tribe's reservation land. It's called Kilkitch, but it's a KWC Coos Bay. And so there's a lot of shared resources, and we do offer telemedicine with our primary care doctors that are in Coos Bay. So if you needed to get in, it's a little bit easier to access healthcare and holistic services. Go to the next slide. Yep, and why is it important here in Lane County? I think it's important to note that there's over 6,000 American Indian Alaska Natives in the Lane County footprint. It's about 1.5% of the population, but it is still a large population. So any member of any federally recognized tribe, American Indian or Alaska Native tribes, can go to our healthcare clinic, and through Indian Health Services, there is no copay or out-of-pocket expense. So it's a huge advantage to have a tribal clinic here locally. I know folks they've got tribes that are out of the area, or there's just a burden for out-of-pocket costs. And so for this to be here now, you don't have to drive 3, 4, 5+ hours to go get care. It's just here right off of River Road. So there's a need that it's filling, and also I'm sure most of us have heard with just some of the gaps in healthcare and services. It's a great way to, as the tribe shows up in community, being able to give back. Any member of the population, Alaska Native, American Indian, or otherwise, can use the services here. But I would just say that any member of the federal tribes get absolutely 100% healthcare covered, but it is open to the general public. The doctors are exceptional. They've got a great team, and we really look forward to kind of just furthering that footprint and developing out the healthcare unit, the healthcare service sectors. That's all we had planned for. That was a lot. And so many different operating companies underneath Tribal One. I think we said in the beginning, it's a mouthful with all the companies in the 8A programs, but we wanted to open it up for questions, and feel free if anybody has questions. Yeah.
Your wharf project, does that have any tie-in with the proposed container port there?
Good question. So the container port is out on what we call the spit. that's not near us in close proximity, is probably about a few miles away from us. But we should see a secondary impact if that project goes forward. They're going to be we've already had inquiries about whether it's storage or if it's additional capacity, or we have a rail spur on our property as well. So we would probably see a secondary impact if that goes.
How many ships do you have called?
None right now. So our tenant is in the process of erecting the building and getting their startup. So they expect their first vessel fourth quarter of this year.
So the log export business kind of disappeared?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
I'm most familiar with like the reservations in Utah. You have the Red Butte, you have Navajo Land, Tine, and then Arizona, the White River Apache reservations. And I have friends, and I worked on some of them years ago, but they were truly nations. I mean, you know, they had their police force, and they've always been, or not always, but you know, since forever. And I've kind of struggled here in Oregon understanding, because I guess all of the tribes were, like you said, deinstitutionalized or whatever. So how much, when you given land?
Now, the federal government and the Tribes Restoration Act said we can't give you your land back, so you can buy it and then ask us to put it in trust for your behalf to be your reservation. I think it is a hard concept because some tribes do not lose their land, and I shouldn't talk for you, you should answer this, but you know, there are probably 6 tribes in Oregon that were terminated in the 1954 Western Termination Act, and then had to fight for restoration like we did. But there are some treaty tribes that have been, you know, I'm thinking Warm Springs, they were not terminated, they were just moved to a different area.
Yeah.
So it is I think the important thing to remember is every tribe is very different, and every tribe might have a different, I guess, founding documents from Congress or treaty or agreement that makes them very unique. But I don't know, as a tribal member, if you have any.
Yeah, well, just I think also our tribe was the last of the 9 Oregon tribes to be federally restored. And the parcel of land that we had to purchase, it was, you know, less than desirable, for lack of a better term. You know, it's very remote, it's very rural. It's even from Coos Bay, it's about a 15-minute drive into Coos Bay North Bend. So it's still, when we talk about bringing broadband to the coast, like we really had to build this from the ground up using our own tools and resources to make that happen, to buy back, to build enough money to buy back land and then be able to put it into trust. So, yeah.
What was the original homeland for the Coquille tribe?
Really, it's there was a lot of intertribal marriages, a lot of trading. The southern Oregon coast was kind of the heartland for the tribe, but the members didn't just stay in one spot. Tribal members would go upriver for hunting and gathering and fishing, and then come back in canoes to the, you know, the ocean or the mouths of the rivers. And so it really was very resource driven. And there is a lot of, like I said, intertribal marriages. I'm looking at my family tree and I see members of the Mith-ih-Kwuh tribe, which is really close and near to Coos Bay. They have, you know, properties in Florence, but when our constitution with the federal government designates this service coverage area as those 5 counties, Lane, Coos, Curry, Jackson, and Douglas. And, you know, there was 2 different languages. Language is a whole nother thing that the tribe has recently, Nick introduced us as the Coquille Indian Tribe. Until I was probably about 14 or 15 years old, it was the Coquille Indian Tribe. And through some of that language recovery and relearning and learning about our culture and uncovering the Milik language and Athabascan were 2 languages that were spoken in the tribe. And so it's pronounced Coquille, meaning coque being, does anyone know what a lamprey is? It's like an eel type fish. That word was Skokum in our tribe, and then Kwuh meaning people, so people of that fish or people of the Eel River. So that's why we call it Coquille. When French and settlers moved into the area, there was the French language sounded fancier, and so they changed it to Coquille, even though it was Skokum and Kwuh for river and eel. So anyway, so there, if you're on our tribal website, there's a shorter version, I'm sure, of that story, but it does, and I think people ask, I get that question all the time, like, why is it Coquille and you say Coquille? And it was that until I was 14, 15 because of the recovery of language. And now I'm proud to say we do have language being taught in tribe to our Head Start kids and just anybody. We have language classes via Zoom that any tribal member, no matter where they live, can learn some of the language. So.
And in fact, thank you, David. The other thing I would add to that is when Congress restored the tribe, they looked at where the tribal members were. And the 5 counties that are included in the Restoration Act is where those people were. Like David said, there's people in our tribe that could also be Klamath tribal members, and they disenroll from Klamath and they enroll in Coquille. So yeah, there's a lot of, like David said, driven by trade and marriages and
also that
weather and
the camps that the people were marched up to on the northern Oregon coast, there was a lot of, where did you come from? There was really poor documentation on where did these people come from. So the Kalapuya tribe that was here in this area was marched up to these Indian camps and now are members of the Grand Ronde and Silet. So they kind of fall into those 2 very large tribes. Our tribe is about 1,200 members. So relatively pretty small tribe, of which Lane County is the second most densely populated area for tribal members living here. So there's about 90, close to 100 tribal members, and then their households, their families, and that's not accounted for, but just tribal members alone. Coos County being the first of that area with population densely populated, and then Jackson County number 3. But we look at those areas and say, because of the memberships that's there, what services can we offer and provide and bring into that community to serve those members, but also the larger community.
So there wasn't a direct connection with the Kalapuyas in the valley, then it was separate tribe on the coast?
Is that what
The
it?
Kalapuyas, which are originally were pretty much the valley down towards Medford and that area. But there wasn't a direct connection between the Coquille. Is it?
I'm not an expert on the Kalapuya tribal history, and when you've met one tribe or one tribal member, you've met one tribe. I think we've heard that before, but I do know that what happened to the people in our tribe and the tribes that were, across the state of Oregon were marched from their homelands and stripped of their lands and their villages and their families. And some stayed, some were able to stay back. And I think those were the ones that made it, because they weren't marched up to the camps and the conditions and, how they were marched up there with no food or resources and water. And it just is, a horrible time in life. But, I think in the beginning we choose to celebrate in the footsteps of our ancestors. My grandfather's no longer here with us, but I know he's looking down and he's really proud of the work to see where he was at in the 80s and giving that testimony to Congress, which in a time was, you grew up, you didn't talk about it, you weren't sharing that, you kind of hid that ancestry from the external world. And so I know he's there looking down and he's really proud of the work that we all do to make the tribe a better place. And ultimately sufficiency and sovereignty, exercising the sovereignty rights. So.
I lived in Alaska. We talked to David for years, and so I got a chance of actually working for a Native corporation up there, and then I also worked for the Boys and Girls Club. And one of the coolest things I got to do, I'm curious if you do something similar, is where we took all the City Club kids and we flew them out to a Native village, and they got to fish the original way, how the villagers did, and also spend time with the elders telling stories. And it was just such a cool experience for not only the people of the village, but also all these kids. Do you guys do anything like that with your tribe in terms of outreach?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, my mom is a 5th grade school teacher, and Oregon passed Senate Bill 13. If some of you are familiar, it is the creation of curriculum that is specific to the tribes that were in the area. So my mom, I grew up in Glide, Oregon. She's a teacher there. She's been a teacher for 35 plus years. And every year she takes the entire 5th grade cohort on a field trip to our reservation. They get to do storytelling, they get to do carving, they get to, you know, do a sleepover in the plank house and learn about the cultural heritage and some of the history of the tribe and see some of those ancestral sites that are on and off reservation. But it is it's really cool. My mom did a lot of work with Senate Bill 13 and a lot of the, you know, learning and teaching, creating curriculum that's being taught in public schools that is specific to the area of where the kids are learning. So they're learning about the Cow Creek tribe and the Coquille tribe in Glide and Roseburg in the Douglas County area. So
At those events, the cultural foods are not a big hit.
At ours, they were, they loved it.
Eating salmon eyes and what else? Camas bowl.
Camas bulb. I would say we did camas bulbs, and I think we overcooked them, and they were like a glue, like a paste, and it was not appetizing to look or taste.
That's good for them to see.
It was terrible. It was awful. But it is. We still practice these. So we go. We will bring kids from our tribe and we'll still take them out into the forests and fiddle fern harvesting. We'll go camas bulb digging. So it's really important, clam digging, crabbing. We'll take them out so that they can learn to harvest and to fish and to hunt and to gather, but also what were the items that our ancestors were looking for or harvesting with, you know, from shells to pine nuts and, you know, the abundance of resources that were really specific to the geography of the forests, the lakes, the rivers, the ocean.
Where does your work under the economic development arm of the tribe intersect with the advocacy work of your tribe?
That's a great question. I think our tribe, like I said, every tribe is very unique. And our tribe, the way our tribe sees economic development is arm's length. So we really have enjoyed being able to drive economic development without politics, because it is I like to tell our employees it's a family-owned business. And that's what we are.
For thousands of years.
Right.
Thousands of years.
But we know that the government side, that's their expertise, right? There are times that we do get involved in advocacy that impacts business, and that's kind of where, and there's been times where I've tapped in to that advocacy, expertise and said, I'm having a problem with the Army Corps of Engineers getting this permit, and I need to get to the decision makers. Can you help me? And then we go, we can have that government to government conversation with the tribe and the government side. But we do get it, I would say, specific to business matters policy that impacts our business units specifically. Do you have anything?
I mean, in also just in a setting like this, I mean, we get to be here to talk about the tribe, but also talk about the business arm of the tribe. I would say this is sort of that similar advocacy work where we're showing up in communities and showing you what the tribe does, all the good that the tribe brings to the community for our tribal members and also the communities and where we are at. So just being able to be here today is part of that advocacy. Yeah.
So I guess a couple of questions. Family-owned business. So are you incorporated?
Great question. So I'll start with that. Yep. So we are a federally chartered Section 17 corporation.
Okay. And but that goes back to that per capita where, again, all the profits are run back into the company. Watershed management, that's a big issue. And, you get into the salmon, you get into the dams on the Columbia, you're not up there. But there's a real conflict in terms of what people feel in terms of watershed management. Leave it alone, but then it's never been left alone. So how do you manage and what do you do, or because you mentioned that?
Yeah. I think it's the checks and balances. It's interesting, and we've talked about what's good for business, and sometimes the tribe doesn't always agree that that's the best decision, or there's absolutely no return on the business, but the value of the culture and giving tribal members opportunities is more important and outweighs the return or any return, but in specific to watershed rights,
That's not our lane.
Yeah.
I would just say that's not what business does. That's driven by the tribal government. And there's been times that as the business side, there's been business opportunities, and it's our job to look for opportunities, right? And leverage that we've brought to the tribe, and it's not congruent with the tribe's perspective. So then we say thanks, and here's what we see, but we understand that there's a bigger driving mission. I don't think we can answer that because it's not our lane. I can say that we work on dams and bridges with our companies.
Good answer, Judy. Very smart. I do have a question. So it's fascinating to me, the enterprise model that you built, and Lillard, like you said it, from nothing. You know, you started from nothing not too long ago. So is that typical, or is it unique? And how did you do it? I mean, just sort of a little bit of historical context. How did that, I mean, that's remarkable.
Well, I was 3.
Uh-huh.
So.
You had a lot to say when you were 3-year-olds. Particularly David Hill 3.
Well, I'll let Judy take this, but I do remember watching on the Weyerhaeuser property a stack coming down, and it was on a home recorder, a video camera, a handheld video recorder back in the early 90s. And it was just a very joyous, momentous day. It's something about very symbolic to see a stack, an old stack that probably had a lot of industrial cleanup, but just that first step in bridging into economic development and starting a business. But
Yeah, no.
how did you do it?
It's taken years off my life. No, so back, I mean, we were really, I was in offices with plywood because we couldn't finish the carpet, and, you know, we couldn't pay our bills, and we're negotiating with vendors. So it really is that kind of a deal. In terms of building the government contracting division, that is a lot of sweat equity. That's me wearing about 4 or 5 hats, trying to, you know, just build that, and not just me, you know, a very creative and hardworking CFO. It's a team, right? So I tell our council that we have a pretty unique model, and that we have that magic of the team, and I'm sure you can relate because you've seen it. But when you have people that are driven, purpose-driven, mission-driven, and trying to think creatively, you attract good talent. And a lot of our senior executives have been with us 15, 20 years, which is pretty remarkable. And we've been able to attract great people that are willing to maybe not have the fancy office, but understand what we're trying to do and want to be part of building something. But it's not been, I think maybe the last 5 years that I haven't been trying to, I call it pull the rabbit out of the hat. That's, you know, those kind of things where you're just trying to be super creative about problem solving, financing, and finding capital, because we didn't have any to use. Yeah. It's been the last 5 years that I feel like we've been in a much better place economically.
And sorry to go back, but are there other tribal?
I've not met a tribe that can do it.
Okay, so I'm not crazy.
Yeah, no.
It seems
pretty
very
unique. Yeah. And I would go back to, it's our tribal council, the founding fathers that created that constitutional document, and then having a tribal council, which is really your governing body that is stable. We had the same council for, I think, 20 years, not a lot of turnover. So when you're a business entity working underneath that, having that stability, continuity, reliability, that was part of our success.
That's very helpful.
Yeah. That doesn't happen in a lot of tribes. They're turning over every year. Very hard to do. This is the only tribe I would work for. Yeah.
Other questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you expand on the couple initiatives, the future initiatives that you mentioned, and then also how they will fulfill your mission even further?
Sure. Yeah, I would say for healthcare, that's a really big, you know, we're seeing a lot of provider turnover, not necessarily just our niche, but we are seeing gaps in services for communities that, you know, during COVID, I think I tried to call, before we even had a clinic here, I was on a 3-month waiting list to get in to a provider for something that I thought was fairly urgent. And so just that access piece is something that we're really proud of, to be able to, wait times that are not 3 months, and being able to really dive into that space and using satellite clinics like the River Road Clinic and remodeling to meet the needs of the community with some of the stuff that we've recently seen in terms of mental health, behavioral health, and being able to really fill a service that is a community need at the same time, while also aligning with the tribe's priorities. Do you want to talk about energy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the things that we see on the horizon for opportunity is energy. So I created Tribal One Energy, and I think that there's opportunity there. We haven't quite have that one figured out, but I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity that we can leverage and find ways to bring value and expand the infrastructure. I don't know what that's going to look like, but we know that there's something there. And that's part of what we do, is just we're continually creating companies and creating jobs and access and opportunity based on market conditions, right? Like probably all we do. And I should say, back to your question about structure, we have the opportunity to create state LLCs, or we also can create by tribal ordinance, tribally formed LLCs also. And I do both based on the conditions and what our objectives are.
How many do you employ under?
Yeah, so this is excluding the casino side. We're about 140 employees. And we're throughout, on the Tribal One side, we have employees in South Carolina and Seattle and Colorado, all over.
Did the startup funding come from the spin out of the casino?
Yeah, originally, that was the goal, but it really, the seed money for a lot of the things that we did, we self-funded through broadband specifically. And our council was able to see the vision and allow us to retain earnings to be able to continue to grow. That's another thing that's kind of unique. They understood the business model of working capital. You need, especially if you're going to grow, you need to be able to have that capacity.
Do you have a preference in hiring towards tribal members?
We do, yep. By tribal law, if 2 candidates are equally qualified, then the tribal member candidate is the one that we will choose. I should say, I think tribal employment is maybe 10%, 15% of all of our employees. Maybe, I don't know, maybe.
I'm still learning that, meeting everybody.
Yeah. What do you think, Jay? Just oriented. But it's not like 50-50, I should say that. We because of the self-sufficiency model, I feel really passionate that business is a great way to teach people, but not as many tribal members as I would like to see for sure. And that's not counting the Centro side, which probably has a lot more.
Yeah.
You talked about looking for market opportunities as a way to expand your workforce in the business space. What do you see in the next 10 years for market opportunities for people?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. I think construction is in the best environment that it's probably seen as an industry for a while. So I think construction is going to continue to expand. There's a lot of infrastructure money that still hasn't been spent that has been federally appropriated. So I think that needs to work its way through all the bureaucracy also. Energy is another one of those things that I see, and probably something on the wharf, that wharf project, whether it's foreign trade or it's partnerships. We're a big partner, and that's something too of how it helped us grow with limited capital, is making really great partnerships. And that's always, and IT, infrastructure IT, especially in the government space, they are way behind in their legacy systems. I know you don't want to hear that, so we'll just go la la. No, but there is a big push to upgrade that infrastructure and provide, necessary upgrades to federal infrastructure.
Even just like the John Serbu and the Lane County Corrections, just the access controls, surveillance, things that are needing updates that haven't been updated. I can't speak to how long, but I know that they need an update. So that's here and now.
Right, no more? Well, thank you.
Thank
David
you
and Judy.
for having us. Thank you.
And I'll be supporting Travel One by going to Margaritaville, so.
It's always fun.
Let's get a bus
I didn't even
together.
know about it.
Yeah.
The facility looked amazing. So, thank you all for coming. Reminder, March 21st, we have a legislative update. And then starting in April 4th, we're gonna be meeting in a new location, Roaring Rapids. And so we'll be able to, buy a lunch there. And, thank you again for coming, and everybody have a wonderful day.
Yeah.